My name is Rob Leininger. I'm the Fire Chief, Springfield Township. Issue 23 is the fire levy renewal. 5 years ago, we put the levy on. It's a 1 mil levy. We put it on because we have not had a fire levy since after the 9/11 event. We needed additional funding to sustain our operations, to replace equipment, to hire personnel, and so at that point we put a 1 mil levy. The levy passed, and we have been able to sustain and continue to provide the services that are in demand throughout Springfield Township. But we have reached that renewal point. We have reached that, we're asking the voters to renew the levy, at which point the key is sustainability of our services. And that's really key. We have worked hard to provide excellent services to our residents. We have we provide both fire and EMS, even though we're called a fire department. 70% of what we do is really EMS, and that's the demand. And when there's illness, when there's trauma, when there's sickness, that's what's really in demand. And we work hard to hire some of the best people in the county, and we provide some of the best equipment available. It's the cardiac monitors, it's the ambulances, and it's the personnel costs, and all this involved in operating this fire department and EMS division. That is important. And so we ask, and I brought some information in the back. It's a fact sheet, and it talks about really what it's for, what we've been using it for. But again, it's issue 23. It is a fire department renewal, and the most important thing is it will not raise your taxes. It will not change your taxes at all. So that's the key. Thank you very much.
My name is Rena Saperstein. I am a member of the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan organization local here in Cincinnati. You're all welcome to join us. We have a variety of voter education activities. We also do issue activities where we look at issues in the community and what good government would look like. We provide this beautiful thing, which some of you look for every year, I hope. It's available at your public library. It's also available at a number of other locations and in City Beat, and there's a whole stack of them over there for you guys to take before you leave. And we also have the same information available online through our Vote 411 and vote411.org on the web. You put that in, and then you put in your address, and it will give you your particular ballot, which is useful because I don't remember which judicial district I'm in. I don't know about you guys, but some of those district things can be a little confusing. This will give you, with your address, your particular ballot with all your issues, your districts, and so forth. And then you can actually read up on each issue individually, pick who you like and which issues you like, and either you can write them on the back here, or you can pick them on the online service and then take that with you to the polls. That will also tell you what your polling location is, although I suspect everybody in this room knows their polling location very well. Okay, so I was invited just to go over briefly the ballot issues that are on your ballot this year. You have 2 state issues, 3 county issues, and the 1 local issue, which the fire chief already spoke to. So I'm just going to go over the state and county ones. And so the 2 state issues are both initiatives, meaning that people petition to get them placed on the ballot. The first is a constitutional amendment, the second is a law. They were both actually, interestingly, and this is not always the case, but they were also both brought by groups that have tried similar laws in other states as part of bringing certain laws to various states in the country. The first one, issue 1, it's a constitutional amendment if passed. It's called Marzy's Law. The name Marzy's Law refers to a young woman named Marzy who was unfortunately the victim of horrible crime. Her family has been pushing this law around the state, and it's called a Victims' Rights Law. It basically enumerates in the state constitution the rights of victims of crime. Now, what you need to know about that is, first off, the Constitution already holds for the due process rights for the accused in a crime. The feeling was that the rights of the victims also needed to be enumerated. However, the state of Ohio already has a victims' rights law. It was passed in 1994. So the pro and con on this issue 1 is whether or not we feel that our current 1994 law is sufficient, or whether we need this constitutional amendment which would strike out the current law completely and enumerate additional and stronger and some of the same rights for victims of crimes. So those include the right to, obviously the most important one that everybody talks about, which is in the current law but would be enforced in the new constitutional amendment, about being notified every time the person who is accused is coming to trial, if they're out on bail, if they're out on probation, and so forth. Because the whole Marsy's law was started when the family of the victim found that the guy was out of jail and they didn't know it, and they were very upset about that for good reason. But it also gives the victims the right to intervene in some ways in the actual court proceedings. So you have a lot of attorneys who think that's wonderful, and you have a lot of attorneys that say that that's going to be a problem for due process. So you have to look at both sides. So that's issue 1, constitutional amendment, yes or no. Issue 2, you're seeing ads about it, tons of ads, millions of ads. Okay, me too. So the funny thing is I can't even give you a name for this one because the pro and con have different names for it, of course. But it would be a law in the state of Ohio, and it deals with how the state of Ohio pays for medications. Now, mind you, these are medications that the state pays for state-funded medical services, okay? So you got private insurance, doesn't apply to you. You got Medicare, that's federal, doesn't apply to you. It applies to Medicaid and to certain Ohio government functions. For those functions, this law would say that the state of Ohio should only pay what the Veterans Administration pays for drugs, okay? So the argument is that by setting that limit, the state saves a whole lot of money, and that money could then, because the state's spending a fortune on drugs, obviously, right? And then therefore the state could either cut taxes, was it as one argument, or just save that money to spend on other things. The argument against it is, will the drug companies just raise the prices someplace else to make up for the money that they're getting less of from state purchases? So there's pros and cons both ways. You can read a lot more detail in here. Both sides have put out tons and tons of materials, pro and con, about the issue. Again, this is a issue that's being tried in a number of different states. It's so new in all the states that it has passed that we have not seen the results. It would be great if we could say, well, it's being done in this other state and we can see it works or it doesn't work. We have not seen that yet. It has passed in other states, but we haven't seen the results yet. So that's issues 1 and 2. Now we get to the county issues, okay? I'm not going on too long. County issues, you got 3. They're all property tax levies. They are all renewals for 5 years. 2 of them are straight renewals. 1 of them is a renewal and increase, okay? So I'll go through these really quickly, and then we can talk all day. But all of this is on page 18 of this beautiful voter guide, so I'm going to support myself by looking at it as well. So issue 3 is the mental health services. The way mental health services work in Hamilton County is that there is a mental health services and addiction services board. A couple of years ago, they joined 2 separate boards, and they've one board for both addiction services and mental health services. This particular property tax levy is for mental health services. That board basically contracts with a large number of nonprofit organizations and some governmental organizations to pay for a variety of mental health services. That is a 5-year levy. It is a renewal of a past levy, so it's not changing your taxes any. Many of those services are mandated, which means if we don't pay for them through property taxes, we will pay for them from the general fund. Some of them might be additional that we would not have if we did not have this levy. So that's issue 3. The pros and cons are pretty simple. On the one hand, the mental health levy is seen as offering very needed services. On the other hand, it is a property tax, and that means that property tax owners are paying that tax. So that's the pros and cons of issue 3. Issue 4, also a straight renewal, meaning no additional taxation, but still taxation, is health and hospitalization. They used to refer to this as the indigent care levy, so a lot of people know it from that name, but I don't like to call it indigent care because it's actually health and hospitalization. The vast majority of this money is going to either University Hospital or Children's Hospital for a variety of healthcare services, mostly for people who are uncovered. But there are other parts to this bill, to this levy as well. So it also pays for things like healthcare for inmates in the Hamilton County Jail. Okay, so that would be otherwise a Hamilton County cost. It's still a Hamilton County cost, but it's being paid for out of this levy. There's a number of alternative programs in there that have drug addiction components, so alternative interventions for women. There's the St. Paul Charitable Pharmacy, which is a nonprofit organization that provides pharmaceuticals below cost to people who have don't have full medical coverage, especially for people who get in that gap, what they call the donut hole, off the streets, and other programs, and they're all listed here. But the vast majority is University Hospital and Children's Hospital, and again, that's just a renewal. So not every community has a health and hospitalization levy. So you could say you could say on the one hand, this is a wonderful thing that our county does this extra amount of money for health care, or you could say that you don't feel that that's a necessary thing. And that is what the health care levy does. And it also has some new organizations that would be joining that levy, such as the Hamilton County Heroin Coalition, dealing with some of the heroin and opiates addiction issues that we're seeing right now. So those are issues 3 and 4, both were straight renewals. Issue 5, renewal and increase at senior services. So the way senior services works at the Hamilton County level is there's the Council on Aging, which most of you have heard of. And again, the Council of Aging then does a lot of the services itself, but it mostly contracts out to nonprofits, which you're familiar with is Meals on Wheels, probably. But a lot of those services are home care services devoted to keeping people in their homes. So somebody who comes by and helps somebody bathe or get out of bed or spend some hours with them during the day. The reason for the increase is mostly because of the way property tax law is written. As property values change, the levy does not change, so it has lost value over the 5 years that it's been in effect. The other reason that they're asking for an increase is because we're all getting old in Hamilton County. Old and older, and a larger and larger proportion of very old, that is, people in their 90s, 80s and 90s is a larger proportion of the senior population. So the service needs of somebody who is 67 is a little bit different than the service needs of somebody who's 97. So the other thing that you've heard about in the newspapers about this issue is that the county commissioners, in reviewing and putting this levy on the ballot, made some suggestions for some other agencies that they would like to see funded through the senior services levy. 2 of these are currently funded under the health and hospitalization levy, and they would move them to the senior services levy, which would mean that they would pay the senior component of those issues. One of them is a brand new program. The Council on Aging has been not necessarily saying that they will take on those additional services, and those additional 3 programs are not listed legislatively in the levy. So it will be up to the Council on Aging and the county commissioners to determine whether to add 3 new programs to the services offered under the senior services levy. But the vast majority of those services will still be home care services. So the argument for this levy is it's a lot cheaper for us to help people stay at home than for them to not be able to stay at home and to have to go into some kind of medical facility or assisted care living. The argument against it has to do with it is a relatively large increase for a property tax levy, and there are people who are uncomfortable with that increase and wish that they had just kept it as just a straight renewal without an increase. But the argument for the increase was we're all getting old, you know that. So those are the 5 issues on the ballot. You can see additional information online. If you have a simple question, I could probably try to answer it. But I don't have opinions. I don't give opinions.
How much of an increase is this?
So on issue 5, the current levy is 1.29 mils. The increase is 0.31 mils. So that would be an additional $10 and some cents on a $100,000 valuation per year. So that's not large in the scheme of things, but it's a large for an increase, actually.
Is there information in your booklet on the differences between current law for issue 1 and what the changes would be if that goes through?
So That's very lengthy, so this booklet doesn't have it, but it does have the link. And if you go online, there's also a lengthier link you can actually read, which I did, because I was kind of interested, the actual current Ohio law, and then what Marcy's law
Okay,
proposes.
all right, thank
The
you.
There was a-
League of Women Voters does have a website. If you go to the Board of Elections page, drill down to election 2017, and then drill down to the video line, and there are videos, and the sidebar is loaded with pro-con on issue 1 and 2. I took 35 minutes and learned a whole lot, just in a 35-minute time, watching videos and clicking the sidebars.
And that's really useful stuff, but if you actually want to read the legislation, there is a link for that. So it's Ohio-ish, I forget the actual number of the current Ohio Revised Code language that you can read that would be replaced. Sorry.
The Inquirer had a story this morning on issue 1, and it's sort of
Yeah.
a condensation summary.
Oh, I haven't read the paper yet today.
And there's the ballot language is up here on the flyers if you want to see exactly what you're going to see on the ballot.
The
Those are
current law
available
was
for-
passed by the legislature, not a constitutional amendment, correct?
That is correct. The new would be a constitutional amendment. And so one of the considerations is this appropriate to a constitution versus a legislative solution? And the rationale is that creating rights could be considered to be a constitutional issue. All right, I really appreciate your inviting me to be a part of your forum. And if there's any way the League of Women Voters can assist you in getting voter education and voter information out, we'd love to do that.
Thank you, Rita. Very, very informative. And this concludes our event tonight. And I hope that you have time in your world in the next few years to be involved in the City Town Civic Association. We are looking for some new members, and to see me or Robin or from Nancy in the back, and we'll hopefully have your participation in mind. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.